I'm Mike,
And I'm Amber. Welcome to the Covenant Chronicles,
where we tell you the truth about relationships,
giving you the tools to build the foundation you always needed. Welcome back to the Covenant Chronicles.
Hello.
It has been
Attempt number 2.
6,688 days since we last did a podcast.
I don't think it's been that many.
Just making up the most random numbers ever. It has been a while, and we are sorry, but we've had a lot going on and chose to take last week off to go to camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Sit by a river for a week.
Yes. Yep. There were no fish in said river yet, which made it a little disappointing because I would like to fish, but here we are.
You'll be okay. A few more weeks.
I can fish for some salmon in a couple weeks. I mean, technically there were kings in the river. I just can't catch said kings in the river.
Not that river.
There was some.
They exist.
There's
maybe.
like 80 a day.
So. It's like the kids was asking is, holy cow, that's a lot. We talked about like 2,500 kings going through last year. And it's like, yeah, let's go back 20 years, back when we used to fish them all the time. It's like 50,000 was the average.
No
Good
way.
years were like 90,000.
No.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And that's how crappy it's gotten. That's
No,
why they shut it down.
80 a day.
Yeah. Well, it was like, that wasn't daily. That was like for the season. But you're talking a month, 2 months. You got 90,000 fish. So you do the math on that.
Yeah.
Anyways.
It's not like reds in the summer where we have like hundreds of thousands a day.
You know the best part?
What?
For people that aren't from here, they have no idea what you're talking about because this is the only state that those are called that.
Kings and reds.
Yeah.
What are their names? Chinooks and yeah. Yeah. Whatever.
Because kings and reds mean something totally different in most parts of the country.
What else would it mean?
They have like totally different type of like kings they catch out in the ocean, like Florida and stuff, I'm pretty sure. And then they have like the reds too, are like totally different type of like ocean fish.
I guess. It's just salmon, people. Salmon. Different types of salmon. We got the good stuff here. Anyways, we are not talking about salmon today.
King mackerel.
Oh, those are just called mackerel.
But they call them kings.
Okay, I suppose. Well, I'm talking about king salmon and red salmon. You can look them up if you don't know what they are.
Yeah. Seeing down in Florida, they have redfish that they call reds.
They got like red snappers and stuff, but that's not.
They call them reds, bro.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Anywho, like I said, this is not a fishing discussion today, although it could be.
Are we not doing a fishing podcast?
We did talk about sitting around the campfire last week and having podcast discussion.
Never happened.
Did not happen. But maybe next time we go down, we could just sit around the fire and talk about fishing.
Maybe.
Probably not. This is a relationship podcast. Anywho.
Hey, fishing is good for your relationship. You should do that. Just saying.
You know what's really good for your relationship?
Standing in the river?
Standing in the river and fishing together.
I know you're going to say that crap.
This bougie guy over here.
I'll stand in the river.
Only likes to fish on a boat. And I've had to force him to stand in the river with me.
That's not true. I will gladly stand in the river.
Uh-huh.
However, when you have access to a boat, why battle people on the shore? You can just go in the boat.
Okay, well, if you're combat fishing on the normal part of the Kenai, that's different. But where we fish, there's not that many
It gets
people.
kind of busy sometimes.
If by kinda busy, you mean, like, there's 5 people also fishing there, that's not really the same. But there is something about standing in the water and being in nature.
If you say so.
It's very cathartic.
I have no idea what you just said. That is crazy.
You can Google that too. It's good for you, okay?
Okay.
Therefore, good for your relationship.
Sure. Yeah, totally.
Listen, before you and I got together, I did not have access to a boat, so I had to stand in the river and fish like a normal person. And then we got together and you were like, "I don't fish on the bank." And I was like, "Who doesn't fish on the bank?"
I didn't say I don't. I just said typically not.
It took you 3 years before you fished in the water with me.
Didn't need to stand in the water. I mean,
Um,
to be fair, the water here is cold too, not like down in the States. Even if you got waders, I mean, it's not exactly warm.
it is cold, but that's part of the experience.
I guess. Or you be warm.
I
Anyways,
I can't. Here
now
we
that I
are.
spent 10 minutes talking about fishing.
Yeah, we're like 7 minutes into this now, just talking about fish. It's fine. Hopefully, we haven't lost you yet. The real point of conversation today is about emotional manipulation
Mm,
and people doing that inside your relationship
mm,
and how detrimental it can be to a relationship. There's lots of different forms of emotional manipulation that can happen inside of a relationship. Um, the old Google says emotional manipulation occurs when someone uses deceptive, coercive, or indirect tactics to control your thoughts, feelings, or behaviors for their own benefit. The goal is typically to establish power, erode your self confidence, and make you doubt your own grasp on reality. Some common ways of emotional manipulation are the G word that you don't love, gaslighting,
mm,
guilt tripping, playing the victim, love bombing, silent treatment, and many, many more. Um, let's see what else we got. Threatening to share things that are private to other people, making you feel
mm,
like it's you and them against the world. Um, but the one that happened today that kind of made me um, think about and want to talk about this because it's something that has happened to me is using suicide as a manipulation tactic, which
mm,
is really harmful. And unfortunately, I think pretty common inside of relationships. And it's hard because all of us have this like automatic emotional like when you talk about suicide, and if your partner comes to you and talks to you about like feeling feelings of wanting to harm themselves or like they're going to do it or telling you that they're doing it or going to do it. Those are all really emotional invoking things. And they're also serious things and things that typically like you want to take seriously. But there's also times where it becomes something that's used inside of a relationship to emotionally manipulate you.
Mm.
And it becomes this repetitive thing that occurs to gain control over you, to emotionally manipulate you, to pull you back into the relationship. And it's, oof, it's super harmful. That's just one particular thing that has been brought up recently that like really made me think about this topic. But there's so many different things that we can talk about with this. I will say, like, I've been in that position before, and it becomes this like worry, like nonstop worry. And it is a way that's like emotionally used against you so that you stay trapped in these feelings of like, well, I have to protect them. I have to be there for them. I've got to make sure that they're safe all the time. But that's not your job to do. And that's when you realize that it's just an a manipulation tactic inside of the relationship.
I would say that there's multiple layers to that. And you see, like you said, there's a ton of different forms of emotional manipulation. And what I would say is that on a deeper level, what you see is when people who have been through things in their past where they have had to use manipulation to survive
Mhm.
tend to carry that with them. And what happens is later in life and in relationships, they try to use the same tactics.
Right.
And if it has worked uh, in any manner or degree, then they tend to default to that when they feel like they're losing the other person. And it's that like fear of abandonment, fear of like losing them, fear of being alone potentially
Yeah.
that they are afraid of. And then what tends to happen is then they use some sort of emotional manipulation. Like you said, the suicide is a big one. Um, that people will use. Other ways of this can manifest in various different formats. And I would say that somebody that has had to use that. Now, here is the challenge with this, right? Is some people genuinely are like hardwired this way, and maybe they're just not a good person, right?
Yeah.
But the reason why I don't like the word gaslighting or narcissist or any of these labels is because it is some label that was developed that applies to a small percentage of people that anybody that deals with anything similar to that loves to throw out.
Yeah.
So what I mean is you hear every single woman on social media now talking about how their ex was did this, and every single dude on social media talks about how his ex just gaslit him all the time. And the problem is one, when you are in those scenarios, there are situations in which certain people are genuinely that way.
Mhm.
Um, we have dealt with that. We've experienced things like that. Um, we've seen things like that. We've talked and mentored people that have dealt with things like that. In most cases, I would venture to say, it is a situation in which somebody has lived through something that they have been programmed a certain way, and they're not genuinely a, a bad or manipulative person at their core. In most cases, it is a situation in which they were taught this behavior by experiences, and they have not done the self work to actually figure out why they are that way, where that comes from, what fear they have that brings this behavior out.
Mhm.
And then I identified where that fear came from and worked on that. Right.
Right.
And so what you see more often than not is, and why I hate those labels is because you'll have relationships that all exhibit some level or degree, right, of these types of behaviors at some junction or point in their relationship. And then they throw a label on it, label the other person as that. And then that's included in all their arguments. And then eventually they break up. And then that person has that label forever. Right.
Mhm.
Here's the thing, I don't care who you are. You all have a level to a degree of all of these labels that you keep throwing out. Right. And so
At least done it once or
yeah, we've had situations inside of our relationship where we've gaslit each other. We've had situations inside of our relationship where we've done something that could be labeled narcissistic, right? That doesn't make that person what it is, right? And in fact, we've removed those labels from our relationship, not allowed them to be part of our discussions, arguments, behaviors, any of that, talked about it,
Mhm.
and actually created a boundary around that, and then said, "Hey, let's work through these behaviors," because what we choose to do, we go back to the internal conversations, uh, is look at everything with each other through a positive lens and say, "Hey, if they're exhibiting some behavior that's harmful to the relationship, why is that?" Right? And we become curious and question why that is. And then we work together as a team to basically figure that out, get to the root cause, and then repair what needs to be repaired.
Yeah, I think
But
that's the tricky part, though, is because most people don't do
right.
that, right?
Mhm.
Or they are doing these things and not asking the questions to figure out why they're doing them, so then it becomes a repeat cycle in their relationship where it is, emotional manipulation.
Right. Well, and it's not just, you'd brought up because the for you, it was something that you dealt with, and it was something that um somebody had expressed to you recently with the suicide stuff. But it's not just that, right? Like it can be where people do, quote unquote gaslight you, or people do, basically find what your insecurities are, and then they try to basically leverage those
Mm,
inside of a disagreement or an argument, or a time of conflict, a period of conflict, and they leverage that to try to gain some upper hand,
right.
right? And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, right? It could be the suicide thing. It could be, hey, this person has a fear of abandonment, so I'm going to leave, and not just, hey, we need to take a break from this. We need to step back from this. We need to, kind of get some space on this because we're not seeing eye to eye, and let's take a little break. But like, hey, I'm just going to go disappear for hours or a day, or you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
or
Or
actually saying, like, "I'm leaving," or
right.
throwing out the, like, "We need to divorce," or and not actually meaning it.
Yeah, yeah, all of those things. You know, we had situations inside of our relationship where, you know, there would be things that was said, you know, I would say, "Hey, I don't know how to deal with this," or you know, "This makes me feel this way," like I wanna go, sleep somewhere else or what, basically expressing how I was feeling in that moment, and it would trigger, like the abandonment stuff in you. And we ended up having to talk about that and say, okay, how can we express things and talk through these things a little bit differently, right? Because in a certain way, we're not trying to cross that bridge of, okay, are we emotionally manipulating now, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, okay, well, so when you say these things, it does this to me. Okay, well, my intention was this is how I'm feeling, right? This is the point that I get to when we're like this. So, okay, how can we talk about this in a different manner? How can we express things using different words that have similar meaning, right? How can we work through this stuff? And I think that's the breakdown inside of most relationships, like you said, where, it becomes this situation that is people, um, eh, they don't try to do that. They don't try to work through it. They don't try to actually see a different side of things. And what ends up happening is just that, where people, end up hurting the relationship. They end up using the emotional manipulation to leverage things, to, you know, shift things, um, to try to gain that upper hand because it becomes more about winning and losing than it does actually moving the relationship forward.
Yeah, I think the point that I kind of wanted to make with it was along the lines of what you've already said, in that, like, there is a degree that probably most of us all do whenever we get into arguments and get frustrated with our partner, because at some point, somewhere along the line, we've all learned some sort of coping technique or whatever to deal with a situation that we didn't like.
Mhm.
And that comes out in, you know, our disagreements and arguments with each other. But the difference is between being in like a healthy relationship and an unhealthy kind of toxic relationship is that differentiation between, hey, like, we might be doing those things. Why are we doing them? Like,
Mhm.
why did that happen in that moment? You know, can we talk about it? The things that you've mentioned, in the past, like we have had those moments of being like, you know, I just need to leave or whatever. And that like triggered something that, then we had to sit and have a conversation about it and be like, hey, let's not use those words. Let's not say it like that, whatever. If we need space, we've got to say it differently, type of thing. Versus in a lot of relationships, I think it comes out as, I'm going to leave. And they're not meaning it as I'm going to leave you forever, but it is a tactic because they know that it'll heighten the other person's emotions. And then it's going to create this, argument and tension even further.
Mm.
It becomes an emotional manipulation tactic. But if you don't ever take the time to sit down and figure out a way to create healthy conversation around it, to have a healthy relationship with your partner, then it just becomes an unhealthy, toxic cycle. And at some point in that, one of you, and hopefully both of you, has to make the choice to actually start healing yourselves and your relationship, but also realize that you cannot change the other person,
Yeah.
right? Like that has to be something that the other person chooses to do for themselves. And if they don't choose that, you're going to be in an unhealthy, toxic relationship cycle,
Hmm.
which is not going to end well for anybody because all of those things will continue happening because they happened once. It got the results they wanted, so it's going to continue happening again. But where it leads into the healthy side and creating a healthy relationship is the ability to address it with your partner, talk about why it's coming up, why it happened, and how you can move forward and work towards it not happening again in the relationship. That's how you start creating a healthy environment inside of your relationship.
Yeah.
If you don't want the emotional manipulation and roller coaster all the time, that's how you start creating healthy boundaries and relation like inside of your relationship. But I feel like that's not, that's not normally what happens.
No, not at all. Like you said, it's no one really identifies, hey, this is why this is this way, or this is why we're doing that. It's an instant, some type of behavior. We're going to throw a label on it. And then, it just becomes this downhill spiral. But there comes a point where both of you have to make that decision to actually make a change, right?
Mhm.
Or not, and if it's or not, well, then one of you has to be smart enough to say, okay, it's time to go a different direction, right?
Yeah.
um because at the end of the day, like, when you are stuck in this perpetual cycle of dealing with this, it's gonna, like, kill you both emotionally, right?
Right.
It wears you down so much that both of you just end up being so tired and wore out and just like with life, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like, you're not supposed to just be in a relationship because you don't want to be single,
Yeah.
right? Because being alone sucks sometimes, kind of thing,
Right.
right? Like, you're supposed to enjoy it. Like, that relationship is supposed to be a gift. You're supposed to build, a covenant and a marriage that is fun and exciting. And, you know, you guys have kids together. Well, after you get done having kids, like, those kids are going to grow up, they're going to move out, right? And then they're
Yeah.
supposed to go start their own families, right?
Yeah.
And then what? Like, and then you're supposed to be able to have fun, enjoy the time with your partner, and be able to be with that person. And when you're stuck in this cycle where one or both of you are constantly trying to win, and it's being done through emotional manipulation, like, that's not, there's no longevity there, right?
No.
You're just stuck in a cycle that eventually one of you, your candle wicks are going to burn out, and you're just going to come crashing down.
Yeah. We kinda had this conversation recently, and, like, we are obviously huge, like, supporters of being in healthy marriages and having covenants, like an
Mhm.
actual covenant that you have built with you, like both of you and God, right? And we don't ever want to be like, your first choice should just be divorce. Like for us, that's not an option, right? And we've built that into our relationship. However, like when you talk about these super unhealthy toxic cycles, and if one of you or both of you cannot choose to actually start working on yourself and creating healthier habits within your relationship, that's not going to change. Like, if the other person refuses to change, it's not going to change. And you have to accept that, you know? And there has to be a point of like, okay, enough is enough. I cannot do this forever.
Mhm.
But also, like we talked about, there is this big, I don't know if you call it a stigma or what, within, the church community, and that like divorce is terrible. You should never get divorced. Well, yeah, we feel that way, like with our marriage and our covenant, divorce is bad. We don't want that. We're not doing that.
Mhm.
However, there are reasons in the Bible that God gave for divorce. And one of them is, oh, what were they? They're cheating
Adultery and abandonment
and
by a
abandonment.
non-believer.
That was the one that we were
Mhm.
talking about. Abandonment. What does abandonment look like?
Well, see,
Emotionally
and people,
abandoned, physically abandoned.
right,
Like,
and the problem is that people will get so caught up in, like, um basically the whole deal about, um oh, well, yeah, but it says abandonment by a non-believer or by the non-believer or whatever, or by somebody that's not a follower. And so here's my question though, right? Because then people get in, because I've had this debate too, right? Where people get caught up in this, well, you know, you can't you can't this person says that they're a believer, and they got dipped in some water, and so I can't. Well, hold on. So you can't say they're not a believer because you shouldn't judge, which I agree, but also it's not your determination to say whether they are or not, right?
yeah,
Like that's between them and God. And you also have to realize that being a believer doesn't mean that you're never going to lose your path, but it does mean that you are in covenant with God,
yeah,
right? And what's so interesting to me is that, you know, even whether somebody is truly a believer or not is their business, and it's between them and God. And so it's almost this double-edged sword, I would say, where we say, well, they're a believer because they've gone to church with me, because they said they've gotten baptized or whatever, right?
ooh.
Because they do this.
My argument, though, can I just add this in before I forget it? If they're a believer, are they walking like Jesus?
Mm,
Is their heart posture like Jesus? Because let me tell you, Jesus was not emotionally manipulating people. He wasn't out here being emotionally manipulative and
right.
then choosing to never make changes.
Well, that's exactly my point, is that, you know, we we can't say whether or not, they've been saved. But here's the thing. You also can't try to justify whatever they're doing by saying, "Oh, well, they're a believer."
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you right now, the enemy has more faith in Jesus than most people that show up to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, right?
Oh, yeah, he
So
wholeheartedly knows
for
about
sure,
God and Jesus,
he
yeah.
he can't he can't even go on an all-out attack without God's permission.
Right,
Like, look at it in the Bible,
right.
right? And so we can go into a whole deep theory because we've talked about this before on podcasts too about us allowing. If you're being attacked, it's because you're allowing, and people will go, "Well, that's not true." Da 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 da.
Mm,
Okay, well,
yeah.
Galatians 2:20 says, "No longer I who lives, but it's He who lives in me." So He's living in you,
Mhm,
right? You show me an example in the Bible where were there demons? Yes. Were there these situations? Yes. But those were possessions.
mhm,
You show me one example, biblical example, in which the enemy actually attacked somebody and God didn't give him permission because it doesn't exist. It's
mhm.
not in the Bible. And so when he is attacking you, you have given him permission
Permission, yeah,
as a believer. If Christ is living in you, you're giving him permission to attack you.
yeah,
And people are like, "Oh, crap," right? Like, they don't think about that,
yeah.
and the Bible is congruent. It's the same all throughout, right? So you can't have it one hand and not in the other, right? And this is the exact same way where people will go, "Well, my spouse is doing X, Y, and Z," right?
Mm,
Or maybe they're committing infidelity and, the argument could be made for abandonment, but they go, "Oh, well, I'm gonna keep da 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 because this,"
mhm,
right? Because, oh, they're a believer. Okay. Well, here's the thing, right? Acting in covenant with your spouse is not something to take lightly. And when, like you said, if you are a follower of Jesus, that doesn't mean somebody isn't going to stumble from time to time. It's going to happen.
yeah,
We're all human. We're going to go through seasons, right? But if you've been living the same thing for a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever the case is,
right.
right?
It's no longer a season,
It,
that's just
right, right,
that's the identity you've assumed.
right. And let's be honest, most people are also not married in these situations either, right? So you're not even eh, living out an actual covenant to begin with,
Yeah,
right? But the reality is that in the Bible, it says that God hates divorce. It says where nowhere in the Bible that you cannot get divorced, right? And this is the biggest challenge is there is a stigma around church of you can't ever get divorced. You have to stick it out no matter what. Da, 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 da. Okay. There are situations. Here's the thing. We're not here to tell you what you want to hear. We're here to tell you the truth.
mm,
And the truth is that those same people that are telling you that are telling you, well, I'm human. Don't take my word for it.
yeah,
Okay. That same person that's telling you you can't get divorced is saying that advice from a non-biblical standpoint because that's not what the Bible says, right?
yeah,
And I think this becomes the challenge for people of, like you said, where people just feel they have to stick it out because this isn't that and da 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 da. Yes, if you have a covenant, it should be forever. Divorce should not be an option, but you have to make the choice. Both parties have to make the choice on the altar, right? We talked about this before. What is an altar in the Bible?
mhm,
It's a place of sacrifice.
yeah,
Same thing they call the place where you get married. They call it an altar,
yeah,
right? We talked about the walking down the aisle with both families separated on both sides, and the
Yeah.
relationships there between different covenants in the Bible.
Yeah.
And so the reality is that if both parties enter that covenant,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Which is not what most people are doing when they get married.
No. And here, let's go there. Because what did God do to Abraham before Abraham walked through both halves of the animal? He put him to sleep because he knew he couldn't keep his end of the bargain.
Yeah.
And what happened generations later? God
Jesus.
divorced
Yeah.
his people.
Yeah.
He quite literally says in the Bible, he divorced his people,
Yeah.
right? You are no longer my people
Yeah.
because they committed adultery against him.
Yeah.
And so the reality is with these emotional, manipulations, if you are entering into a covenant with somebody, you need to build that covenant. Maybe you've gone a long ways and you've been married for years and you're realizing, hey, we're doing it wrong, and that's okay.
Mhm.
You can rebuild, right? You can say, hey, we've done it the wrong way.
Right.
Let's do it differently now,
That's
right?
the thing to identify, that you can
Right.
rebuild, but you both have to choose it.
Correct. Correct. You both have to choose it. And it's funny because it's no different than our relationship with God that they talk about. Look what God did before he divorced his people. He put them in timeout, you know?
Yeah.
And he at the end of the day, right? These emotional manipulations can, like we said, manifest in so many different ways. You have to draw a boundary in your relationship to say these are not okay. These things are not okay. And there has to be a hard boundary on these things,
Right.
right?
If they continue,
Hmm?
our relationship cannot continue. But it has to be a choice that you're both making to actually choose to become better people, to make better choices, to
Mm-hmm.
fix your past, to rewire your brain, essentially, to stop choosing the identity of an emotional manipulator,
Yeah.
because that's the identity you're assuming when you do those things.
Yeah.
That was kind of weighty.
We're going to have a lot to unpack on that one.
Yeah, it was kind of a lot there. It kind
Mhm.
of veered off with some other stuff, but I think it was good because it all ties together. And things that we've heard recently being talked about in different places, and then we've had the conversation together. Like, that's not really how we see it. That's not really what, we feel is said in the Bible. And, so to bring
Mhm.
it here and
Maybe we'll
wrap it
do,
up.
maybe we'll have to do a whole podcast on divorce.
Yeah. Oof. I feel like that might be controversial, but
I love pissing people off. So,
you, you do love that. It probably would be a good one, though,
Mhm.
for sure. Well, we will leave you with that. And to say that, if you feel like you're in this situation where you eh, or your partner or both of you are currently doing any of these things and emotionally manipulating each other, maybe it's time to sit down and have a conversation about it and start trying to heal your relationship so that you can work towards a healthy relationship and move forward. You can't you can't stay stuck in the cycle. And, like we said, are you living your life out like Jesus, or like how Jesus would want you to live your life?
Mhm.
You know, would he want you to be in a relationship where you're just emotionally manipulating your partner to get your way? or to get what you want or to be, the bigger person in the relationship. Like, is that actually a relationship that Jesus would be okay with? I don't think that he would.
Mm,
So,
probably not.
yeah, think about that one for a little bit.
Yeah. On that note, action items for this week.
Yeah.
Action item 1,
Uh-huh.
share this podcast with 3 people you know.
Yeah.
If it resonated with you and you were like, man, I know somebody that's going through this, share it with them, but share it with people you know. Let them listen to this, let them understand, let them learn, maybe something they've never heard before, or even just something they go, aha, right? Like a little light bulb going off type moment. The other thing is, if this resonated with you and you and your partner are like, man, we've done some of these things, we want to fix it, there will be a link in the description to
Mhm.
do a free 30-minute call with Amber and I. We can sit down, we can talk about things, come up with a game plan to move forward for you guys, and explore options of mentorship, coaching, even just sending you in a direction to go have some materials and some stuff to help you out
Mhm.
and see what that looks like or how it could help your relationship.
Yeah. That's the best place to start.
All right. On that note, we will talk to you guys well, you will hear us in the next podcast.
Until next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.